Hi everybody, it's Onyx here and welcome to the movie. I hope you guys really enjoy this. The intro is going to be short, however, all the social is linked down in the description down below, Discord, Twitter and so on and so forth. Please go check them out, it'd be highly appreciated if you do. Also, the second channel and third channels there as well, just in case you guys want to see more of me. So let's begin. We're going to begin our what if off with Izuku Midoriya waking up for his 4th birthday, as Izuku was ecstatic knowing that he's going to go to the quirk doctor today and see what his quirk was, because recently Bakugo has started to bully people because recently he started to actually get an ego because of his quirk unlocking and having a flashy quirk known as explosions. As we cut back to Izuku's point of view, with Izuku rushing into his mother's room, jumping straight on her and asking her, can they go to the quirk doctor today? Can they? Izuku shouted as he jumped up and down in pure joy. As Inko replied saying, yes, of course Izuku, we can go to the quirk doctor in a little bit, okay? We just need to get you ready and go to the store really quick, okay? Okay, mommy, Izuku said in a very cheerful tone, as Izuku got ready for his first day as 4 years old, as Izuku walked downstairs to be greeted by his mum and father. Yes, Hasashi isn't a deadbeat in this one. As Izuku ran up to his father, hugging him, saying, Papa, aren't we going to the quirk doctor today? Izuku said in a cheerful tone, trying to get his father to take him first thing, even though Inko already told Izuku that they needed to go shopping first. As Hasashi managed to influence Inko to actually do the quirk doctor first, and it saves Izuku consistently droning on about it for the rest of the day. As Inko would have gave in, as she would have just said yes to Izuku going to the quirk doctor first thing, as Izuku would have got ready and arrived at the quirk doctor that day, as his quirk would have been assigned as full counter. After many tests and many fails and trials, they managed to actually figure out what it was, as Izuku would have been told back to go back to his mother and father, which Izuku did so, as Izuku arrived back at his mom and dad sitting in the lounge area in the hospital room, as Izuku would have tugged on his parents' t-shirt asking them to go back to the room so they can go get his quirk evaluated. Inko, Hasashi and Izuku both walked into the room with the doctor smiling. This doctor is the same like the original, as they all were told to sit down, as Inko would have asked them why the doctor was smiling so brightly, as the doctor would have replied saying, your son has a really powerful quirk, it's called full counter. He can take blasts and redirect them, but the only downside to this, he has to have a sword or some form of thing on him that can redirect the power. The only way he can actually activate his quirk is if he swings his arm out. That's so cool, Izuku said, cheering as loud as he could. As Izuku just said, so I can be a hero? Yes, you can, son, Hasashi said in a very cheerful tone. As they all thanked the doctor who did Izuku's quirk evaluation, as they both went to the mall to go to shopping district. As they all were shopping, as Izuku ran into a store to pick something up from a store, this being an All Might figurine that he's wanted for a while, as Izuku used his birthday money to buy it, as Izuku was walking around the store, see if there was anything else he wanted, because he still had $10 left. I don't know what that is in yen, so you guys gonna have to do the calculations for yourselves. As Izuku was finishing walking around the store, as he saw something that caught his eye. Let's just say this was chocolate. As Izuku went to go pick it up and went to the cash register and bought it. As Izuku walked out holding his mom and dad's hand, skipping very cheerfully through the mall. While Izuku was skipping, being very cheerful, Izuku felt the ground rumble from underneath him. As Izuku looked down to see the ground had cracks in it almost. As Izuku would have looked up to see a wall being smashed through. This person who smashed through being All Might, as All Might crashed into a store as a man was floating through the store windows that All Might smashed through. This being a man called All For One, as All Might would have saw this charging back at the man, but realizing there was a bunch of civilians around the area, as All Might couldn't go 100% all out, no matter if he tried to. As All Might tried to escape the building, but was stopped by All For One's wind cannon, throwing All Might back into the ground. As Asashi would have saw this because he is the number 3 hero of Japan in this timeline, as Hisashi would have charged in at All For One, as All For One would have noticed him, grabbing him by the throat, slamming him into the ground, as Izuku would have shouted, "Dad!" Izuku would have shouted out, as Inko would have just told Izuku to run while she tries to hold him off long enough, as All For One would have charged, or at least tried to charge at them, but was stopped by All Might's 100% smash, sending All For One into the floor, leaving a massive crater, this giving Izuku Inko given enough time to run, as Hisashi would have tried to stand up, which he succeeded in, as Hisashi would have tried to help All Might in this, but All Might would just tell him to run. "This fight isn't for you, Hisashi. Go, now!" All Might shouted at him, as All Might would have just shouted this at Hisashi, as Hisashi would have complied and ran to his family. But before Hisashi could even get close to his family, All For One would have used his quirk activation tendrils and throw Hisashi to him, stealing his quirk in the process of this, as Asashi's body just went completely limp, as this annoyed All Might because one of his closest friends just got his quirk stolen right in front of him, but he thought he was dead, so All Might lost it, as All Might just used 100% straight away and charged straight at All For One, knocking him into the sky, as All Might would have just gone, "You bastard! You dare hurt him!" All Might shouted at the top of his lungs, while All Might was throwing 100% barrage smashes at All For One's head, knocking him back loads of feet, as his All Might would have managed to get some space in between them, as All Might would have took this time to try and recover as much stamina as he possibly could. As we cut back to Izuku and Inko's point of view, with Izuku crying his eyes out seeing his papa, thinking he might be dead. "Papa? Dad?" Izuku said in a very quiet tone. "Please wake up, this isn't funny," Izuku said, as Zuku started to pull his father's arm to see if he was still awake, as Inko started to test for his pulse, realizing there was one not there, or one wasn't there to be more precise, as Inko started to cry and hug Izuku as she carried him out of there. Unbeknownst to them, All For One was watching them while fighting All Might. I wonder," All For One said, as All For One covered himself in that black goo that they showed in Series 3 with All Might versus All For One, as All For One decided to teleport right in front of Inko and Izuku, as All For One grabbed Izuku out of Inko's arms, as Inko tried to grab Izuku but she couldn't reach for him, as All For One just decided to blast her back. All Might seeing this, he would have jumped in and caught her at the exact moment she was about to slam into a wall, as All Might shouted, "Damn you, All For One, preying on the weak so you can get your way again, I see," All Might shouted. "I will not let you harm that kid," All Might shouted, as All Might tried to charge at him, but unknown to them, All Might was about to almost kill Izuku, as All For One just decided to put his hand on Izuku's face. Symbol of peace. If you come any closer, this kid's about to understand a world of pain," All For One said in a very menacing tone, as we cut to Izuku's point of view, shaking, scared for his life, as Izuku would have tried to get out of there, but he was still struggling and struggling, as All For One said to him, "Stop struggling, child, or you just will hurt," All For One said, as All For One placed his hand on Izuku's face, as a red crimson light decided to envelop Izuku from All For One's hand. "I always wondered what would happen if I combined these two quirks together. Well, no time like the present," All For One said while menacingly laughing, as crimson lightning spread around Izuku's entire body. As All For One's lightning faded, Izuku burst into black flames. As Izuku's eye turned crimson black. As Izuku looked over at All For One, as All For One was just smiling at him. There we go! Perfect! Perfect specimen, All For One said. As All For One started to laugh maniacally, All Might, the moment he dropped Izuku, rushed in there at beyond of 100%, as he smashed All For One into the ground just like the cannon when All Might destroyed his face, leaving Izuku to fly into the air. No one realized this except from Endeavor, as Endeavor flew in there, catching the little boy in his arms. As Endeavor decided to descend down to the floor and return the young youth to his mother, who was on the floor near the hospital ambulance and everything like that and above. As All Might would have defeated All For One just like the original anime, as All Might wouldn't be too injured in this original because he wouldn't be as reckless. As we come back to Izuku's point of view, as Izuku was running to his mother, crying and crying on her lap, as Inko just hugged her child and thanking Endeavor for saving her baby boy. As Izuku went to the hospital that day, as Izuku was checked out for everything and there was barely any injuries on him, only a couple of scrapes and scratches on his face. As for Inko, she only had 2 or 3 broken ribs, which was covered by All Might because he wanted to understand what All For One wanted with them. As All Might sat at the bottom of the hospital bed, explaining what they're going to have to do. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya, we're going to have to put you into intensive care. Basically, we're going to have pro heroes watch you 24/7. Would that be alright? As Inko didn't have a second thought and instantly said yes to this. Inko was still grieving on the thought of losing her husband, so she had to push those feelings down to make sure she takes care of Izuku. As those couple of days went by, Izuku was moved to a different school multiple times, so he can actually not be found out about people like that. As around Izuku was moving around schools, he saw someone getting bullied. As Izuku would have ran up to them, asking them why the hell are they bullying her. As they would have read saying, well, she has a flashy quirk, so we're better off just burning it into her head that she's useless now, so she won't be able to become a hero in the future, and that leaves us, top number 1. Ha! As they both started laughing maniacally. As this would have pissed off Izuku beyond compare, as Izuku's mark on his forehead started to show glimpses of it, as Izuku pulled out a little black flame in his hand and threw it at the boy without realizing it, burning the boy's clothes off entirely. Around this time, Izuku would be around about 7 years old because he would have been moved around so much. As Izuku went to the girl asking her if she was alright, as Izuku introduced himself as Izuku Midoriya, it's very nice to meet you. As this blue-haired girl would have introduced herself as Nejire Hado. As Izuku was helping Nejire up as they both interchanged names. While Izuku was talking with Nejire, the bell rang for them to signal that they both had to go back to class, as Nejire walked the opposite direction from Izuku because, remember, they're a couple of years apart, so of course they'll be in different classes. As that day went on as normal, as they did PE, sports, more or less, as they did history and their IT lessons, which they would have learnt at a younger age. Since Izuku lost his father, he was really hesitant of making really good friends because he had to move schools every so often when people figured out who this kid was, because it was public knowledge for who Izuku was, because he was saved by the number 1 and number 2 heroes, and they would have probably caught it on camera. As Izuku was walking out of the school grounds to go back home, as a blue-haired girl walked up to him, nudging him on his shoulder, saying, "Hello, and thank you very much for helping me," the blue-haired girl said. As Izuku would have just retaliated, saying, "You're welcome," Izuku said, stuttering in on his words. as Izuku just decided to walk, with Nijire just following him around like a lost puppy, just trying to get his attention and try to start a conversation with him, as Izuku just decided to speed up and almost started to run, as Nijire just used her quirk just to try and speed up because she's not the most athletic person. The moment Izuku started to run though, Izuku picked up more pace more and more than what he would thought he would be running at, because since Izuku was put into the protection of the heroes, most of the top 10 heroes and below decided to train Izuku on his combat skills and his physical shape, as Nijire was still struggling to catch up, as she just stopped to catch her breath because her quirk relies on stamina. "Please wait up, Izuku," she shouted out loud, as Izuku just continued to run down the street, as Izuku lost her finally, as Izuku just sat there panting to catch some air, as once Izuku caught his breath of fresh air, he decided to walk all the way home, with 2 pro heroes trailing behind him to make sure he was fine. The moment Izuku arrived home, he was greeted with a tight hug from his mother. "Izuku, where have you been? You're late," she said in a very worried tone. "Mom, I'm fine, Izuku said. "Don't have to worry about me. I've got pro heroes trailing me regularly. It's fine," Izuku said, as Inko started to warm up and say, "Okay then, do not arrive home late tomorrow then," she said in a very worried tone, as we do a time skip for another 2 years, with Izuku being his final year in primary, more or less, in the UK. As for Japan, I have no bloody clue. This marks the day Izuku's going to be in his first day of Izuku going to his junior high school, as without Izuku realizing it, Izuku was going to be in the same school as a certain somebody. As Izuku was walking into his first classroom of the day, Izuku was greeted with 2 people saying good morning to him, this being Mina Ashido and Kaminari, as they both introduced themselves really giddy and happy for them to meet new people, as Izuku would have greeted them back and just go straight to his seat, as Izuku just sat there, as the teacher walked in introducing himself to all of the students, as the teacher would have said to them for them all to just have like a 2 or 3 hour break so they could walk around the campus and get used to it, as all of the students would have agreed to this, as they would have all walked outside. The moment Izuku walked outside of the classroom, Kaminari and Mina both walked to him, introducing themselves to him, but Izuku would have been trying to be distant with them, but they would be forcing themselves on him. Not in that way, you perverted bastards. As Izuku just gave in, and Izuku just walked with them for the rest of the hour, as a bell rang to signal for the classes to be over. As Izuku was walking down a hall with Mina, Ashido, and Kaminari, Izuku saw a blue-headed girl walking out of her class. "Oh shit," Izuku said in a very worried tone, as Izuku would have tried to cut a corner, but he would have still been noticed by this blue-haired, light-haired girl. As we cut to her point of view, "Izuku?" she said in a very questioning tone, as she just walked over to there and see who it was, as she turned around to the corner to see Izuku hiding around the corner. "Izuku!" she said, hugging him in a tight embrace, as Izuku just stood there and he was forced to take it, as Izuku just embraced it and hugged her back. Through the years, with Izuku and Nijire both grown a really big relationship, so Izuku and Nijire, you can count them as like siblings or something like that, or you can mistake them as boyfriend and girlfriend. As Mina just asked Izuku, "Izuku, do you know her?" As Izuku replied saying, "Yes, I do. She was in my primary school," Izuku said, as Nijire just hugged him tighter saying, "Who are you?" she said in a very weird tone. "Oh, I'm one of Izuku's friends. We just met today," she said. Through those 2 hours, Nijire was showing Izuku around the school, as Izuku would have gotten a rough understanding where everything is, as Izuku would have just sat there to eat his lunch with Nijire, Hado, as Mina and Kaminari would have come to join them because they went to the cafeteria to grab something to eat, as through those couple of minutes through that, 2 familiar faces came walking up to Nijire and Izuku. The two familiar faces just stood there and say, "Yo, Hado, what's good?" the blonde-haired youth said in a very strong smile on his face. Resembling All Might, you could, accidentally, mistake him for his son. "Hi Mirio, hi Tamaki," Nijiri said in a very cheerful tone. "What's up?" she said, as Mirio and Tamaki just both explained that she wandered off randomly and they couldn't find her, so we're just wondering where you were exactly. "Oh yeah, sorry," Nijiri said. "I'm hanging around with one of my friends who I've known since I was 6. He saved me from a bunch of bullies. A lot, actually." "Wait, really?" Mirio said. "How cool. So what's your quirk?" Mirio said. It's full counter," Izuku said, as he stuttered on his words, almost accidentally slipping out black flames. Or, you guys, the viewers know, is assault mode, basically. As Mirio saw Izuku's facial features change the moment he mentioned his quirk, as Mirio just apologized, stating that if it's a touchy subject, he apologizes. "No, it's fine. It's fine, Mirio. I don't see much point in wondering why you want to know it so bad," Izuku said, stuttering on his words. As the final bell rang to tell everyone to go back to their classrooms, as Izuku and Mirio and Najiri both walked to their classrooms, as Mirio both said goodbye, as they both arrived to their class. As we do a time skip for the next couple of years, as Izuku was in his final year of junior high before he had to go to middle school. Through the years, Izuku would have talked to Nejiri a lot more, but since Izuku got to his second year, he would have not seen her as much because she will be in middle school in her first year. But since Izuku's in his last year, she will be in her second year by now, as Izuku would have been sat there with Mina Ashido and Kaminari both talking to each other about random stuff, as the teacher would have walked in with some altitude tests, telling everyone to sign where their middle school is going to be, as everyone put down their same middle school as like in canon. But the only thing they'll be changing here, Izuku will be going to a different middle school than Nejire, Mina, and Kaminari, as they all signed their papers, as the teacher would have just dismissed them for the day. As Izuku was just walking down an alleyway, as he noticed two people getting cornered into an alleyway, as Izuku would have been curious by this, as he would have followed it, but still being hesitant to it because he was still being followed by pro heroes, so he still used this to his advantage. The moment Izuku cut the corner, the pro heroes that was following Mirako saw this, as she jumped in legs first, as she used her thick thighs that save lives to kick the villains' heads through the wall, leaving them unconscious. As Mirako would have walked up to the young girl asking her if she was alright, as this young girl would have said she would have been okay, but her leg might have been a little bit bad and bruised, as Mirako would have told Izuku to be safe and just go straight home from here, as Mirako just grabbed the girl and jumped off to the nearest hospital to make sure it wasn't permanently damaged, as Mirako would have arrived at the hospital to drop her off, as her first instinct was to go back to Izuku, which she did so, as we cut to Izuku's point of view. As Izuku was walking home, he saw... I'm taking the piss. He just walked straight home from here. As Izuku arrived home, as he saw his mother talking to someone in a dark... It looked like a tracksuit, but it was his zero wear. As Izuku would have walked up to them and asking him what was wrong, as Inko would have replied saying, "Izuku, I need to talk with you a little bit," she said, as Inko would have just blurted out saying, "Me and Eraserhead have been talking for a long while, and we've come to the conclusion that we really like each other," she said, and I hope you accept it." As Izuku just smiled and hugged his mother, saying that he's happy for her happiness, he said, as Shoka would have walked up to him and put his hand on Izuku's head, saying, "I hope I can be a really good father figure for you, Izuku," he said. Through that day, Izuku and Aizawa just sat there watching TV for the rest of the day, as we cut back to the next day when Izuku wakes up from his dream. He keeps on having the same dream every single night. This dream being with All For One. As we cut to Izuku's dreamscape. Young Midoriya, use my power, you godforsaken, worthless child, he said, speaking to Izuku. You know you couldn't save him. You're so weak, worthless. You shouldn't have had that power to yourself. I should have just killed your mother, he said, as this made Izuku tear up and shut out of his bed, as Izuku woke up in a cold sweat, also crying. God damn it! Izuku shouted at the top of his lungs, this catching the eye of Aizawa and Inko, with Inko running into the room asking if Izuku was alright, as Izuku would just stare at her saying, Am I worthless, Mom? Izuku said, as Inko would have replied saying, No, you're not worthless, Inko said, as Shoka would have walked into the room and just sat next to Izuku, saying that everything will be okay. If it's just a bad dream, I'll sit here and make sure everything's okay, Shota said, as this rare occurrence became less and less occurrent for the next couple of months before Izuku would go into middle school. The moment Izuku would have gone to middle school, however, he would have saw Bakugo, as this would have set something off with him, but he still didn't know what it was, as Bakugo would have walked past Izuku, shoulder tapping him, and this had quietly annoyed Izuku, but not to the point his mark appeared, as Izuku was walking to his classroom trying to find it, as he finally found it after 2 minutes of searching. It was on the second floor. As Izuku found it and walked in, he saw Bakugo with his feet on the desk, sitting back, and just saying under his breath, I'm going to be the best one in this goddamn class. I'm going to show everyone who is the boss first day here. As Izuku just went to go sit down in his desk. A couple of minutes later, however, the teacher walked into the classroom, telling all of the students what they would be doing today and doing a roll call for the people's names. As the moment they got around to Izuku, however, Bakugo just stood up and said, Deku? Bakugo shouted in a furious tone, as the teacher just said, Bakugo Katsuki, sit back down, the teacher shouted, as Bakugo just straight up ignored him, as Bakugo ran to Izuku trying to tackle him with an explosion. You damn nerd! Get here! When did I tell you so you can leave me? Bakugo shouted, as the teacher finally had enough, as he used his stretchy arms quirk. I seriously don't know what the original teacher's quirk was in canon, so I'm just making this up as I go along, as the teacher would have wrapped his arms around Bakugo, pulling him back, but Bakugo let out an explosion at Izuku. Izuku didn't have anything to full counter it with, so Izuku just had it on full blast. As he took the explosion, was sent into a wall, as infuriated Izuku as his mark started to appear. Now this is the part, as Izuku started to leak out tons and tons of bloodlust towards Bakugo, as Bakugo started to collapse due to the amounts of pure bloodlusted pressure Izuku was leaking out, as Izuku's eye started to twitch black and started to go darker and darker and darker, as Bakugo was just clean out, passed out, as most of the students around here were terrified of what Izuku's powers would be, as they all decided to separate themselves from him from then on. We're going to do a little recap here, as we're going to start off with Izuku having his first day of middle school with Bakugo trying to attack him, and all of the students separating themselves from him from then on. This should leave us where we last left off, as Izuku's been at middle school for almost 2 years now, him being in his last year of middle school. As we cut to Izuku's point of view, Oi, Deku! Come here now! Izuku just plain up ignored him because he knew Bakugo was being such an idiot again. The moment Izuku ignored Bakugo, however, Bakugo decided to go to Izuku and tried to explode his uniform, as Izuku just stood there and took it for some weird reason. The moment Bakugo threw his explosions, however, Izuku still had his train of thought saying that he won't make any friends in this school. He's had this train of thought since his first day since the Bakugo incident. Ever since that day, everyone saw Izuku as a villain, and when they tried to piss Izuku off, a black mark would appear on his head, and since then Izuku started to take up meditation, to at least to try and control his anger. This is why he's not getting as pissed. And plus, every single time he activates that weird black demon mark on his head, at least that's what he's called it, he gets visions of his father and that weird white-haired man telling him he's useless, he's nothing. Give in, just give in. As we come back to Izuku's point of view with the teacher walking in, as the teacher would have said, "Okay students, today we'll be doing some career altitude tests." As the teacher just threw the papers up in the air. "I'm just kidding, I know you all want to be heroes." As everyone started shouting, showing off their quirks in happiness. As everything went like the original, with Bakugo jumping on his desk, shouting at everyone, telling them that he's going to be number one and he's going to be the only one that's going to UA with the test scores of 100%. Shut up, Bakugo, Izuku said, as Bakugo just turned around saying, "What do you say, you damn nerd? You think you're better than me?" "I wouldn't say that per se, but you're very, very egotistical." "Why, I oughta," as Bakugo got an explosion ready in his hand, ready to fire, as the teacher would have just told Bakugo to calm down or he would get sent to the principal's office again, as this would have tried and affect his chance of getting into UA. Bakugo just snarled, "You rookie, the teacher's here, you damn nerd. I'm gonna kill you in a little bit." As the teacher read out who else was going to UA. This person, "Oh, Izuku and Midoriya, you're planning to go to UA as well, I see." As everyone just turned to Izuku with frightened looks in their eyes, as everyone just whispered under their breath, "That villain's going to UA? No way that villain can go to UA. He'll get instantly denied." Most of them laughed, while most of them just laughed under their breath, scared Izuku was going to snap at them. As Bakugo got ear twitched at this, as his explosions went off in his hands, creating a little cloud of dust and moisture, as Bakugo looked like he was about to have an aneurysm, but he started to hold it in more and more, which built up his inner rage. As we skipped to the end of the class, as Izuku was packing up all of his things to get ready to go out, as Bakugo tried to do the same things like the original, but Izuku had something handy with him on the ready, which was his pencil. The moment Bakugo threw an explosion, Izuku instantly grabbed his pencil, chucking it up into the air with flinging his hand at the flick of the wrist. He was able to counteract Bakugo's explosion, sending it back to him twice as the amount, sending Bakugo flying back into the wall, with him creating a giant crater into the wall, leaving Bakugo there unconscious, as most of his lackeys came over to him, trying to help him out, most of them calling him a villain, but nonetheless Izuku was trying to be not fazed by it, as Izuku went downstairs to the back end of their school to walk home, as Izuku was walking under the underpass like the original, as Izuku was stopped by a little sludge, little creech of mud on the floor, as Izuku would have just carried on walking, taking it no mind, but the moment he's heard, "Come here, kid, I didn't know that freak was in town, give me your body," as Izuku turned around to see a sludge-like sewage monster coming for him. "What the hell are you?" "I'm gonna take over your body, kid, come on, give me it," the sludge villain would have remarked, saying, "Like hell am I gonna give you my body," as Izuku took a step back, sheathing out his pen, used to use as a full-countered weapon, as the sludge villain would have bolted at Izuku, with Izuku just pulling out of his pen even more, full countering, but it didn't work. Izuku would have realized that and remembered his fight with Mirako, telling her that he can't use full counter in fights like this, with Izuku remembering, as Izuku would have had no choice but to use his black flames, but he was really hesitant of using it, because it reminded him of his dead father, or deceased father, as Izuku got ready to throw a flame of black fire at the sludge villain, as Izuku heard, "Ha ha ha, I am here, Texas Smash!" All this imaginary person shouted, as Izuku turned around and said, "Uncle Mike!" Izuku said, getting knocked off his feet in the gust of wind which was his fist, as All Might would have saw it was his nephew, quote unquote, as All Might would have walked over to Izuku, helping him to his feet. "You alright, Izuku? I'm sorry for knocking you back that far," All Might said, rubbing the back of his head. "It's alright, Uncle Toshi. I just got knocked back, that's all, because of the surprise." "So, what are you planning to do today?" "Well, I was planning to actually go to finish off some shopping that Nezu-san gave me to, get some groceries," Izuku said. "That's cool. You want me to help you then?" "If you wouldn't mind, but I think you need to get back down to your skinny form or people will get suspicious and start crowding you, Uncle Might." Oh yeah, as All Might buffed down back to his skinny form as they went to the shop that day to pick up some stuff for Nezu's bake sale, you would like to say, because of the festival that they normally do every single year. If you guys have seen Season 4, Episode 25 or 26, they do a little sports festival for all of the year groups. As All Might buffed back up to his All Might form, as he handed in the sludge villain to the police. Once after that, All Might and Izuku both flew off to UA, so he could give Nezu the food. The moment they arrived, however, Izuku saw a blue-haired girl that looked familiar to him as Izuku walked over to her, saying, "Nejiri?" Izuku said, as this blue-haired girl looked behind her to see the lovable green fluffy-haired boy that she saw when she was only in junior high again. As the moment she saw him, she cuddled him like a little teddy bear as her cleavage went into Izuku's face without her realizing. As Nejire was starting a conversation, as All Might intervened, saying, "Young Midori, I think we need to go deliver these to Nezu before you two start getting flirty again." As All Might would have said this, Izuku would have just smiled and nervously said, "Okay, All Might, let's go," as Izuku really stood and fluffed out of his mind. As Nejire would have put a suggestion in, "Can I come with you guys too?" she said in a very innocent, cheerful tone. Yeah, sure, Nejire-san," Izuku said, stuttering on his words. As Izuku, All Might, and Nejire both arrived at Nezu's office, as All Might knocked on the door 3 times to signal that it was him. As All Might and Izuku both walked in, with Nejire just standing outside of the door to wait. As Nezu would have thanked them both and told Izuku that he could actually go off recommendation or just come in straight away. "You're a really promising student, Izuku. We don't want to lose that." As Izuku replied, saying, I know that, Mr. Nezu, but I'd rather take the exam like everyone else, because I feel like it'd be unfair if I just come straight in. You'll feel like I'll be taking the place of someone that would probably earn it." As Nejire would have just walked in saying that, "Izuku, you deserve it a lot more than what they do. You're a really good hero, and you should be here," Nejire would have remarked. "But I feel like it would be—" "No, shut up, Izuku. You deserve it more than what they do," she said in a very pouting face, which Izuku couldn't resist to say yes to. And now this begins our 10 months of training. With Izuku's training regimen, I would probably stay around about probably just going to the gym, lifting lots of weight and trying to get buff, I would try and say. As for Izuku's training with his fire quirk, I would probably say Gran Torino and a bunch of other fire heroes like Endeavor would probably try and help Izuku to try and control his fire side of the aspect of his quirk. Every single time Izuku would lose control, Eraserhead would be there to try and erase Izuku's quirk in time so he didn't destroy much of the model city. And also, through those 10 months, Izuku would have tried to get a job, but most of the people there would have denied him because of his quirk being really villainous. For some reason, their society's fucked that way. As Izuku was about to give up on all hope, he decided to take a job up at a random bar in the area, like a pub, as some British people would say it. As Izuku went into the shop, as the man saw his muscle build, he looked like he had good posture, as the man just called Izuku over, asking him how old he was. Izuku replied he was 15, but to the man he looked like he was about 18-19, so without hesitation, the man hired him. A couple of days later, Izuku received a little envelope in the mail from the actual pub, or bar as Americans would say it, as Izuku would have just sat there and read it. It's saying that he's been accepted into this job. All of his stuff will be at the workplace tomorrow. I thank you for your applying for this job, Izuku Midoriya, and have a pleasant day. As Izuku just smiled and just let a tear roll down his face. As Inko came into the room, asking him what was wrong. As Izuku would just reply, just saying that he finally got a job at a pub. Most of the jobs that he has been to for his job searching. I'd like to say that I might have confused my words there, as Izuku finally would have got accepted into a job, with Inko being really happy for her son. She would have just hugged him and said, "I'm so proud of you, Izuku," as Izuku told her that he's going to be working tomorrow, as Izuku would have got a long night's sleep. As when he woke up the next day, he instantly grabbed his stuff and went out the front door, him being greeted by Inko saying goodbye to him like usual. As Izuku arrived at his workspace, being introduced to everyone there and being trained on how to use all the materials and everything and like that and so on. As Izuku went out that day, as Izuku would have arrived at Yue's front gates for his daily training, as Nezu for some reason was standing there talking to All Might, as Nezu would have just said to him that Izuku's training is going to be postponed until later today because of some certain circumstances that they have to go through in the media. For some reason, people are leaking or falsely accusing us of abusing our students too hard. Izuku walked to them, asking them what was wrong, as they would have given Izuku the rundown, giving Izuku to tell him he's got the day off today to do what he wants. As Izuku would have just called Nejire and asked her if they want to hang out for the day, as Nejire Giri would have said yes. As Izuku and Nejire would have gone out that day with some people staring at them, with the men staring at him in jealousy. As Izuku and Nejire would have hung out through that entire day, with Izuku being more fidgety, the same with Nejire. As Nejire would have just curled up to Izuku, falling asleep on him when they were on the bus going home. Izuku didn't realize it, but Izuku was starting to blush like a red storm, seeing down her shirt, seeing her cleavage. Izuku looking away with a red blush on his face. "She's adorable," Izuku said in a whispering tone. I might ask her out," Izuku said mentally. As Izuku was still thinking about this, as we cut to the end of the 10 months of training area, you got skamazed, as Izuku would have just got to the front gates of UA, thinking about what he's going to do in the entrance exam. As Izuku was walking in, he tripped like usual because he was still nervous. As Izuku fell, almost landing on his face, him being stopped by a brown-haired girl. As Izuku turned around, seeing that this girl had rosy cheeks and little suction cups on her fingers that looked pink, as Izuku would have just thanked her and walked in. "No, this isn't a rocket ship, don't you guys worry." As Izuku walked in and sat next to, well, Bakugo, you may be asked. Since through the training, Bakugo's mind has opened slowly and slowly to the thought of Izuku being a rival, but Bakugo being the arrogant prick he is, he probably wouldn't still think this, as Bakugo would have just snarled at Izuku, but still wishing him luck in the entrance exam, cause he knew Izuku had a quirk in this timeline. As Izuku arrived at the gates, if you're wondering what he got on the written test, he got second place because, well, Nezu taught him. As Izuku was getting ready to start, as he was stretching all of his ligaments so he can get ready to run, as Prison Mike was shouting, 3, 2, 1, go, as most of the students was running out, but Izuku just stood there getting ready. As the moment Izuku saw everyone out of the gates, he used a little tiny bit of his flames and rushed forward. In this timeline, Izuku still has control, it's just minimum. As Izuku charged that up and threw a fireball at most of the 3-pointers, he managed to get 5 3-pointers with 1 fire blast. As Izuku's stamina was starting to drain him, As we cut to the 0-pointer, Izuku managed to get over around about, I'll say 80 points. I would say that. As Izuku was getting ready, as Izuku sat there trying to get the rest of his stamina back, as Izuku heard a rumbling under his feet like it was some form of earthquake, as Izuku looked behind him to see a hulking behemoth, as Izuku was ready to run until he heard her scream, "Help me!" this girl said, as Izuku without hesitating would have probably run in, and as the moment the big behemoth tried to throw a punch, Izuku pulled out his dagger that one of the SWAT heroes would have made for him, and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Full counter!" Izuku shouted, as Izuku would have just thrown back the punch that the 0-pointer threw at him, sending it back 3 times the force, as the 0-pointer's head would have blown off, same with his left arm, this being falling back, as Izuku would have just helped the girl out and helped her up, with the girl thanking Izuku for all his help, as Izuku around this time would have actually gone straight to work, as he would have arrived back home that day seeing his letter straight away on the desk. Just remember, Izuku's actually Nezu and All Might's quote-unquote nephew, so in retrospect he will get it early, as Izuku would have opened it, as this. We're going to begin where we last left off with Izuku opening his letter from UA and his acceptance into the hero course. Izuku opened his letter to see a picture of All Might popping up like a hologram. Izuku would have just been shocked at it, but still, he wasn't shocked because he knew people that was in the hero course who had the same thing. All Might's point of view, more or less. Izuku was reading what All Might said, as All Might just kept on speaking, saying that, "Izuku Midoriya, you are being accepted into the hero course as a Class 1A student!" As All Might revealed all the points that Izuku would have got in the entrance exam, as All Might pulled up every single point, seeing Izuku managed to get to 90 points, as Izuku was shocked at this, but Izuku wasn't shocked because he was trained by the #1 hero, All Might's teacher, and including Nezu for his smarts. "Izuku Midoriya, you've been accepted into UA 1A Hero Course," All Might said in his proud hero tone. Izuku was ecstatic that he managed to get into UA. To be honest, he thought he was going to fail, but still, he was still excited nonetheless. Izuku just walked downstairs and picked up speed as he went. He jumped down 4 last steps as he ran to his mother, telling her that he got in. Inko was really happy for Izuku, as she would have just said, "Do you want to go celebrate, Izuku?" As Izuku would have just tried to say no, but Inko would have interjected, saying that, "Come on, you haven't celebrated in a really long time. Come on, celebrate. Celebrate," she said in a chant. Izuku gave in and actually went to go have a celebration, as Izuku just said, "Where do you want to go, Mom?" I think there's a pub down, or bar, you Americans like to call it, down in the suburbs of Tokyo. Do you want to go there?" As Izuku rapidly nodded his head, but he still asked his mom, "Isn't that still expensive? What about Dad's savings? Aren't we gonna burn through them?" Izuku said, as Inko would have just said, "Nonsense, we have a lot. Actually, since your dad was the #2 hero, he still got brand deals and everything, so we still barely have to work. But I still recommend you work, Izuku, so you don't have to. So you guys to actually save your own money and learn how the real world works instead of just staying inside training all day." "Okay, Mom," Izuku said, as Izuku and Inko both walked outside to actually get ready. Not outside, inside, sorry, to get ready. As Izuku came out in a dress shirt, as Inko just came out in her normal attire that she would wear to go outside. As Inko started to call a friend that she had a while back, this being Nijire's parents, as Izuku and Nijire would have met up at the basic pub, basically. They would have sat there and congratulated Izuku from getting into UA, as they would have just sat there and ate like usual family members would do. As Nijire and Izuku both sat there with eyes locked at each other halfway through the meal, Izuku just had weird feelings inside building up in his stomach, as Izuku thought to himself, "I'm going to confess my love to her today or tomorrow," Izuku said in his head. I don't see the point in actually going through the rest of the meal, because I don't see that as an appointment factor that I could add in the story. So I'm just going to skip through the meal as we're going to get straight to the first day of UA. Izuku was walking through the front entrance as he was greeted with two people standing right in front of the class door. Izuku saw a girl with pinkish hair and a boy with little red tints of hair. Izuku was about to walk up, but he was stopped by a girl with brown hair, thanking him for saving her. Izuku would have done the same things like in canon, but he wouldn't have freaked out, because it would have been around basically females in this timeline because of Midnight Miracle and that training him. As Aizawa would have just peeked behind him, saying, "Izuku, Midoriya, I was expecting more from you, instead of just chatting." "Oops, sorry, Aizawa," Izuku said in a very straight tone, as Aizawa just told everyone to go sit back down for where their seats were meant to be, as Aizawa explained what their school day was going to be based around. As this is where the storyline differs. Instead of they're doing it straight in the morning, they're going to do it straight in the afternoon. So they're going to get little bits of better scores when they're fully awake. As Aizawa told everyone to get their under gym uniforms and go head outside, as which they did so. As everyone was getting changed as they were staring at Midoriya. "Yo, Midoriya, bro, what's wrong with your... Whoa, what the fuck?" Kirishima said, as most of the boys in there was looking at Izuku's body, thinking, "God damn, you're shredded, Midoriya. What did you do for your training?" I just basically did normal weight training and boxing, that's all." Izuku told this for a lie, but it was true still nonetheless. As Mineta would have tried to sneak through the hall, but he wouldn't have got away with it, as Jiro would have sticked Tarifa and Jack in Mineta's eye, blinding him in his left eye for a bit. "Ow, what the hell? What the hell was that?" as Mineta said, as Jiro just said, "Pervert, keep your eyes off us." As Mineta would have just said, "But I want to see the beauty." Jesus Christ, my Mineta's voice trash, holy shit. As everyone would have walked outside in their gym uniforms, as Aizawa would have tossed a ball over to Izuku, telling him to throw the ball as hard as he can using his full power, as Izuku would have just looked at Aizawa in pure sketchiness basically, more or less. No, that's not a word, but wordplay. As Aizawa would have just said, "Izuku, use it. You've been training for a while. You know you're scared of it, but just use it. It's not gonna hurt you. And even if you lose control, I'm here for it, okay, Izuku?" Aizawa said, giving him some confidence, as Izuku would have just nodded and just thrown the ball normally, with Aizawa just looking in pure disappointment. "Izuku, I don't have to do this to you, but the next time you throw this ball one more time, if you don't use your full strength, you will be expelled." "But Aizawa..." "No buts, Izuku. Throw this ball with your full power, or expulsion is on your name." "Okay," Izuku said, as Izuku just started to be surrounded in his black flames, as Izuku, without thinking, would have just thrown the ball off instinct, sending it flying all the way to 2,200 meters, shocking mostly everyone there. As Bakugo would have been in a furious rage that Izuku's been hiding this power from him, but he would have just tried to do some explanation digging, as mostly everyone there was confused why Aizawa was a first name basis with Izuku, but he just brushed it off thinking it was something else. As they all went through the apprehension test, with everyone getting the same score like the original, but the same difference here is Izuku being in 4th place, with Bakugo being in 5th. This being infuriating Bakugo beyond repair, because Izuku relied on his actual physical training instead of his actual quirk. So in retrospect, Izuku is stronger than Bakugo with physical strength. Bakugo was really pissed about the score in the not entrance exam, but the physical tests and fitness, as Bakugo tried to run at Izuku, but Aizawa stopped him like the original. "Bakugo Katsuki, another outburst like this will get you expelled from UA. You got it, mister?" Aizawa said, as Bako would have just scoffed like the original and walking away. As the end of the day came when Izuku walked out of his class, as Izuku was met with a smiling Nejire, as Izuku walked up to her asking what was up, as Nejire asked Izuku to follow her, which Izuku did. Izuku, could you follow me behind the school, please? I would like to tell you something in private. Yeah, sure, Nejire, let's go. As Izuku and Nejire both walked out back of the school. As we cut to Nejire's point of view. Izuku, this is very nervous for me to say, but would you please go out with me? Nejire shouted at the top of her lungs. As Izuku was just a blushing mess, without thinking he said yes. As Nejire walked over to Izuku, placing a loving, passionate kiss onto his lips, with Izuku almost passing out from it, but he grabbed Nejire's side, pushing her in, returning the kiss fully, with Izuku arms reaching for her lower waist, as with Izuku's arms reaching her hips, as Izuku pushed her in further and further. Without realizing it, Izuku was in a full-blown makeout session with Nejire, with no one interrupting them. Izuku and Nejire went a little bit further, with Nejire pinning him almost to the wall, kissing him very vigorously. As before Izuku and Nejire realized, Mirio came rocking out of the wall saying, "Hi Nejire, hi Izuku, how you doing?" Mirio said in a very as Izuku and Nejire both separated each other from themselves, saying, hi Mirio, how you doing?" They're both blushing madly. "Oh, nothing, I just want to make sure if Nejire wants to go out with me and Tamaki to get something to eat." As Mirio just looked over at Nejire with a red blushing face on her. "So, what have you been doing? I know you two are childhood friends, so what you been doing?" Mirio said, nudging Nejire's shoulder. "And it's nothing, Mirio," Nejire said, trying to cover her face with the big blush that she has. "Oh, you sure you two want kissing?" As Mirio just let this out, casually, as Nejire just decided to hit him in the stomach, saying, "Shush, shush! What if the teachers find out?" I don't think they would mind a relationship in school, but it is still against the term of service that the school sets up. But I would recommend you two keep it off school property for a little bit until you become a pro hero, then Izuku can come work in your agentship, I would guess. As Nejire just nodded her head in agreement, as Izuku, Mirio, and Tamaki would have gone out for something to eat that day. As this is where we're going. It was first class of the day. Izuku walked down the hallway to be greeted with a smiling Nejire, as Izuku just kissed her on the cheek, which she returned it with a smile. "So Izuku, how's your first class today?" she said with a smile on her face. "Well, I've got fighting training with Aizawa today, so I think we've got that for 2 hours, so I think we got a breaking down then," Izuku said. "Same here, what's the coincidence of that?" she said, as Izuku just kissed her on the cheek and walked off to his first class. Same with Nejire. Izuku arrived at his first class as he sat down, as Aizawa told them what they were going to do today, as they heard a loud thumping coming from the hallway. As the moment Aizawa was about to walk over to the door, All Might burst the door open, saying that he was here. "I am here in a bizarre position," he said, as All Might introduced them all to their hero costumes as he pressed a button to reveal them all. As the students actually grabbed their suitcases and saw what was inside, as their eyes sparkled, knowing that what they were going to do today was hero training, as they all went to the changing rooms to get ready. As most of the people just stared at Izuku halfway through that time, because Izuku's literal costume was just like Meliodas' costume from 7 Deadly Sins Season 2. As mostly everyone in there thinking Izuku's costume looks really manly and nice. But the moment Izuku went outside, however, he was being looked at by most of his peers, thinking why the hell is his top button undone? Like he's wearing a school uniform still, but more old-timey. "Yo, Midoriya bro, what you wearing?" Kirishima said, walking up to Izuku. I'm wearing my hero costume. Why, is it too flashy?" he said. No, I was just wondering because it looks more like a school uniform." Yeah, I was going for more like an old-timey thing because my first quirk is actually called Full Counter. I thought this would be a lot more of a better fit because I saw an anime called Seven Deadly Sins and he had the same power as I do. So I thought it would be cool to actually copy his outfit and use that to my advantage. As All Might coughed loudly, getting all of their attention. Okay students, we're going to do a little lotto picking. So everyone here come in here and pick a ball. And your teams will be decided from A, B, C, D, or E, and so on. As for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to say Ochako and Izuku got the same one like the original was saying everyone else. As All Might just said, Ochako and Izuku, come to the front of the building to get ready, All Might said. As Izuku and Ochako actually stood in front of the doors getting ready to actually go in, as All Might just get the okay. As we could to before they said this. Okay, Ochako, have you got a plan? No, I was hoping you did, she said. Okay, then I have one. I'll be the distraction for Bakugo. You try and get to the top of the building, you using your float, to see if you can find a way in through the top entrance so we don't have to deal with that. As Izuku walked in, same with Ochako going up to the roof, as she found her way in. Okay, this must be the front entrance, so let's just go in through here. The moment she hopped in, she saw 5 doors in the room, all leading to different areas, thinking it must be like a maze in here. As she started to wonder with her guard always being up, as she heard some gloating in the background with him laughing maniacally, as she managed to get in contact with Izuku, saying what floor it was on. Floor and the first door to your left, Izuku, she said, relaying it to him. As Izuku would have said, that's good, Ochako, I'll meet you there, he said, as he was about to leave before Bakugo shouted, hey damn nerd, where are you? He said in a very menacing, killing intent tone, as Bakugo just started to scream, where are you, Deku? Come out here and so I can kill you! Myself, Bakugo shouted, as Izuku just says, I'm over here. I'm taking the mickey out of Bakugo in the process of that, as Bakugo just turned the corner, seeing Izuku wide open, as Bakugo got ready to fire an explosion, as he threw a giant one on Izuku's head, with Izuku dodging out of the way, ducking under Bakugo's legs, sweeping him with a capture tape. As Izuku actually managed to make Bakugo hit his head, making him in a daze, as Bakugo's gauntlets glue red, as Izuku took a giant step back. If Izuku actually went forward with it, Bakugo could have called the pin and easily annihilated him, knocking him out of the match. That's why Izuku stepped back. As Izuku actually managed to make some distance between them, as Bakugo managed to collect his thoughts, jumping up, saying, you damn nerd! I'm gonna kill you! Bakugo got his gauntlet out, ready to pull the pin. Katsuki, Bakugo, if you pull that, you're gonna kill him! All Might said, shouting at Bakugo, as he'll be fine if he dodges. As Bakugo pulled the pin out of his gauntlet, with Izuku just saying, oh, for God's sake. As Izuku just did the same thing, but in canon, he actually, instead of using wind pressure, uses full counter. As Izuku full countered Bakugo's explosion above him, knocking Bakugo away a little bit from the wind pressure, making it 3 times as stronger when it gets sent back. As Bakugo's explosion went through the roof, hitting it like wind pressure, sending the shockwave through the entire cracks of the actual building, making the hole for Araka to actually use her special move, but it's not as powerful as what it should be in the original, but it still did the job done. As Araka grabbed hugged the bomb like a teddy bear, as they completed that task, them winning with Bakugo being extra pissed, but he knew not to attack Izuku because if he did he would be expelled. Izuku, Nejire shouted at him, charging at him while they were on their lunch break. Nejire, what are you doing? You tickle, stop! She did that by tickling the side of his neck where he's most ticklish. Come on, Nejire, stop that tickles, Izuku said, as Nejire managed to actually make him give up. Alright, you want a hug? Here you go, he said, sticking out his arms as Nejire actually included herself into the hug. as Izuku and Neji both hugged there for a minute, with most boys in Class 1A actually being really jealous at Izuku's found love interest.
Izuku, you want to introduce us to her?
Mineta said with a very perverted tone. Hell no, I'm not introducing her to you, you pervert, Izuku said, kicking him in the head, knocking him into a wall. As Nejire just hugged Izuku's arm, telling him to hurry up. We got a table preserved for me, Yumiri, and Tamaki, she said, smiling. As Izuku and Nejire both walked to the table, eating. I don't see this as important, so I'm just going to skip this bit over and go straight to the USJ. As the press reps would be Izuku and Momo like the original. Everyone put on their hero suits and actually set off for the USJ, with everyone talking. As Tsuyu managed to actually chat with Izuku about certain things.
So, Midoriya-kun, are you dating anyone?
Tsuyu said. Izuku just replied saying yes, but he is not going to tell anyone who he was dating. So she just tried to pressure him into it, but she just completely let go because he's not giving in. As they all arrived at the USJ, with Izuku actually just saying to Aizawa what would they be doing here, as Aizawa just explained to them they will be doing rescue training and a little bit of fighting, little bits of rubble that gets thrown at them basically. As everyone else would have got excited at this. They would have walked in at the USJ being greeted with 13, the hero, as everything like the original would have happened with Araka being excited, as she would have just thrown her hands up in the air saying, yes, 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 we're being taught by Hero 13, she's my favorite rescue hero. Turns out she's been to space, Araka said. As Kirishima would have just walked to the edge, seeing the rest of the USJ, he actually looked down to see a black little mist portal appearing at the bottom of the USJ. Mr. Aizawa, is that what we're going to be fighting villains? This seems a little bit too realistic, Kirishima said. Let me have a look. Oh shit, this is real, Aizawa said. Everyone out now, Aizawa shouted to the rest of the students. As Aizawa just started to force his way through the students so he can push them along out of the exit. He didn't have any time, however, as one of the villains tried to rush up the stairs. Aizawa would have took whiff of this, as he cancelled the guy's quirk, making him fall all the way downstairs, making him hit his head, knocking him out more or less. Everyone get out of here now, I'll try and hold them off as best I can, Aizawa said. As 13, take care of the students. Yes, sir, 13 said, as they all tried to get outside, with Kirigiri doing the same thing as the original. Where do you think you're going, kids? Kirigiri said, opening his warp gate so he can actually absorb most of the kids into it. As everything like the original would have happened, with Izuku, Mineta, and Tsuyu being trapped on the boat. Izuku would have actually come up with more of a basic plan instead of using one for all and breaking his fingers. Izuku doesn't have one for all in this timeline, so we're going to have to work with what we have. As Izuku had the idea to actually use his flame power of his quirk to actually smelt all the water down, but that'll probably kill all the villains, which he didn't want to do. Izuku had no choice, however. They would have allayed this to Sue and Mineta, as most of them would have agreed to this, but it's murder. But we have no choice though, do we? Let me do it and I'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, we have to go with plan B. Suyu's gonna have to jump while I attack. Get ready. 3, 2, 1. As Tsuyu jumped into the air as hard as she could, leaving a little bit of a crater, but it wasn't too noticeable. As Izuku started to fire at the villains with his darkness flame, melting most of the water around them, making sure they can't escape. As Mineta felt like he was being useless, so he threw a bunch of black and purple balls into the water. You stupid villains! Drop on my sticky balls! Mineta said, shouting at the top of his lungs. As Izuku and Tsuyu both landed at the other end of the water like the original, being seen by Shigaraki. But without realizing it, they didn't see Ida slip away, as a giant herd, boom, was heard at the front entrance of the UA, as they saw All Might not smiling. Everyone in front of All Might was scared, but most of the students was actually shaking from the amount of pressure All Might was giving off, as All Might instantly rushed in, defeating most of the villains right in front of him, and damaging most of the building surroundings, making wind flow through the air, like a giant shockwave, which it was creating, as Izuku instantly was picked up with Aizawa, Suyu, and Mineta in All Might's arms. "Don't worry, young ones, I am here," as All Might, without thinking, instantly rushed them to the front step, telling them to actually go up. Izuku told All Might what the Nomu was capable of. He saw Aizawa being crushed by it, as All Might just threw a thumbs up at them, telling them everything would be okay, as All Might rushed in like the original, fighting the Nomu off, basically butting it down, making sure the Nomu couldn't have time to move or react. But just like the original, All Might was trapped under a portal, almost being squished by it. Izuku rushed in without thinking, leaving Aizawa and Suyu and Mineta together, taking Aizawa back up to the top from being heavily injured. Izuku instantly rushed up, however, instantly using 100% of his black flames, using control, as Izuku instantly threw black flames at the Nomu, destroying half of its body in the process of that, leaving it charred and burnt, leaving All Might enough room to escape. Izuku wasn't unharmed, however. Half of his body was being charred and being full of black flame marks on his left arm from using his 100% of his power. As the fight ensued like the original, with All Might beating the shit out of the Nomu, sending it flying out of the USJ. Izuku, however, wasn't unsaved, however. Shigaraki was charging at Izuku, ready to throw both of his hands on Izuku, trying to disintegrate him, as Izuku instantly used full counter on Shigaraki. Without thinking it, however, Izuku didn't realize his decay was actually can be reflected back at him. Izuku, without thinking that, he just flinged his sword to Shigaraki, deflecting his decay right back at him, disintegrating Shigaraki's left and right arms, making him almost quirkless. All of the heroes arrived, with Snipe shooting most of the holes into Shigaraki's arms, legs, and almost torso, killing almost Shigaraki, as Kurogiri surrounded him as they made their escape, like the original. Izuku was instantly rushed to the ER, same with Aizawa, having to be hospitalized for a couple of weeks, or a couple of days to be more precise. Weeks would have been into the sports festival. How stupid am I? As Izuku woke up in the hospital, seeing Nijire sleeping right next to him, very comfortable and tired, like she's been up for hours on end. Izuku tried to power on the head, realizing his arms were in casts. Nijire woke up to this with her face crying and a little dark shadow under her eyes where her hair is. "You big meanie, I thought you died." We're gonna continue where we last left off with Izuku and Nijire in the hospital hugging. Izuku was laid there hugging Nijire like there was no tomorrow, at least he tried to. Nijire just hugged him as tight as she possibly could until she fell asleep again. As the door opened to reveal a green-haired woman as she ran into the room, seeing Izuku laid next to Nijire. She'll be seeing this and she'll be proud of her son for getting a girlfriend so fast into UA. Izuku would have blushed and asked his mum how she was doing. She said she was okay, but she's more interested in what happened to him. As Izuku would have explained what had happened in the USJ, with the Inko having a shocked face, getting flashbacks of her husband dying over and over and over again, mentally scarring her for life that day. As Izuku nudged Nijire awake, she just said, "5 more minutes, okay?" she said in a very innocent tone. As Izuku just nudged her one more time, she just whispered in her ear, "My mom's here, come on Nijire, wake up," she said. This Nijire just shot up and tried to introduce herself to Miss Inko as fast as she could. It was like she was introducing herself at a rapid pace, as Inko would have just told Nijire to calm down and introduce herself normally, which Nijire did so, introducing herself as Nijire Hado, also Izuku's girlfriend, she said, as Inko was just excited knowing her theory was correct. A couple of hours went by as Izuku was discharged from the hospital, but before he could leave the actual grounds, he was stopped by one of the protectives. I wanted to talk to him about the USJ incident, but Izuku just flat out ignored him as he carried on walking, as the detective started to harass Izuku, telling him more stuff. As Izuku turned around with flaming eyes and darkness around him, told him to shut up and leave me alone. Izuku shouted at him as the guy backed off just a tiny bit, as Nejire was there to calm him down, telling him everything will be okay. As Izuku and Nejire both walked home, as we do a time skip of 2 more days where Izuku and Nejire were both walking to UA. Izuku and Nejire both arrived at UA's classes as Nejire said goodbye to Izuku with Izuku in his first lesson of the day. Everyone was talking, but mostly everyone was trying to avoid Izuku because the amount of power he showed, killing the Nomu in the last fight. As Iraka was just about to walk over to Izuku to say something, as the door was slammed open by Aizawa with his broken arm and bandaged up body like a mummy, as Aizawa came walking in to stand up to the podium, telling everyone to sit down and take their seats, which everyone did, as Izuku just raised his hand asking if his uncle Aizawa was okay. Did I not mention Izuku sees Aizawa as an uncle? As Izuku actually was responded by, "Yes, I'm fine, Izuku. Please just don't raise your hands. If anyone wants to question see if I'm okay, I'm fine. I'm up and ready and I'm ready for another fight," Aizawa said, trying to keep the confidence in the air. As Aizawa explained to them they'll be doing a UA sports festival in the next 2 weeks. Aizawa explained, as Izuku and the rest of the class was excited, but Mineta was just shitting himself knowing he might fail this, but he still had confidence nonetheless. As we do a cut to a couple of days when Izuku's managed to fix his arms as while he was training with Nejire in combat. "Come on, Izuku, you can do better than that. I've seen you do better," she said, giggling at him. This just annoying Izuku a tiny bit but not a lot, as he charged at her with a little bit of strength in his arm, knocking her off balance as she pushed her to the ground. As she giggled as Izuku just moved in for a kiss, as Nejire just put her finger on Izuku's lips, telling him, you have to earn it," she said, as Izuku just giggled and say, "Oh, come on," as Izuku just kissed her straight up, moving her hand out the way, as Nejire and Izuku both enjoyed their loving embrace. But it was brutally interrupted by Mirio once again peeking his head through the sand. "So, you two lovebirds, what are you doing?" "God damn it," Nejire was thinking internally, as Izuku and Nejire both wondered what Mirio was doing here, as Mirio just explained to him that he was going to train here with All Might, so he's just wondering if you guys would like to join here along with him, he said. As Izuku and Nejire both agreed to this, as they went with Mirio to go meet up with All Might. As Izuku, Mirio, and Nejire both saw All Might sitting on the beach side, waiting for them all, as Izuku and Nejire both walked up to All Might secretly behind him, as Izuku just tapped All Might on the shoulder, disappearing from his backside. Nejire did the same as well, as All Might was really confused at this. He turned fully around as Izuku and Nejire both said, "Surprise!" making All Might shocked as he fell down a little flight of stairs, but it didn't hurt him because he buffed up halfway down, only doing a little bit of damage to him. I'm going to skip the training because I don't feel like actually writing through this bit of the script, as Izuku and All Might both trained through those coming weeks, as Izuku and Nejire both got stronger than their original counterparts because of All Might's extra training, with Gran Torino and Night A in the mix as well. As the day of the sports festival arrived, Izuku and all of his classmates was standing outside of the front gates of their arena, as they are all told to come and meet each other at the front. As they are all arrived in the arena, everyone being nervous because of how many people are watching them and how many eyes at home were going to be watching them as well, so they had to do their best. As Midnight would have just shouted like the original for Katsuki Bakugo to come to the stands and show his speech. Everything like canon would have happened with Katsuki's speech, as we move on to the actual running or obstacle race, as you would like to call it, as Midnight was just standing there under the stage explaining what they would be doing, as a bus picked them up as they went down to the actual area, being greeted on their way down with tons of obstacles. Most of the kids saw 0-pointers, 1-pointers, 3-pointers, all sorts of pointers that they haven't seen in the entrance exams. Everyone was standing at the bottom of the entranceway. Everyone there was just squeezing in, preparing to get some air. Most people in there couldn't breathe, as most of the people in there actually suffocated, but they still were awake. Izuku stood there being squished by most people. Momo, Todoroki, Bakugo and so on were also being squished. Most of them couldn't move, but the moment the bell rang for President Mike to shout go, everyone came rushing out, with most of the people in there getting trampled, squished even more, or pushed to the sideways, being knocked out. Most of the people came rushing out in a huge steed like Todoroki, Bakugo, Momo, Todor, Karashima, and all of them came rushing out like cannon. But there's a big difference here. Izuku stayed back like in 20th place to make sure they weren't out of line here. Izuku did the biggest strat, trying to retain his stamina as best he could, which this would have worked out for him in the long run. Izuku actually got halfway through the match, becoming in 10th place. Izuku actually managed to get through most of the obstacles before getting to the actual final obstacle, with Bakugo and Todoroki neck and neck halfway through the course, with Izuku getting back to 5th place. The only people that were behind him now is Momo, Yadirozu and Kurashima behind him, same with Tetsu, long ass name I know, as Izuku, and he thought of actually using his black flames, but knowing it will hurt him. He had no choice, however, as he charged up as much as he could in his body into his palms as he focused it like a giant beam of light. As Izuku released it, creating a giant boom, as the only thing you could hear was a giant boom across the stage, creating a giant shockwave of black flames surrounding the area behind Izuku, but not basically hurting the contestants too hard. Once Izuku let go of his core control, he actually released most of his power, sending him flying all the way into 2nd place, as Todoroki tried to freeze him, but he was too late as Izuku accelerated into 1st, passing Bakugo and Todoroki in a flash, making himself in 1st place as Izuku finished the race, winning the 1st round. Everyone finished like their original counterparts as well, if you guys would like to know. The Cavalry Battle would have come around, but the only change I would see here is Tokoyami not joining Izuku because he has black flames, which is Tokoyami's weakness with dark shadow, so he tried to avoid Izuku with this. But the only thing that will be different with Izuku's team is Froppy would have tried to join Izuku's team, which would exceed. There's a big difference here like the original because they don't actually have a full front guard. The only person that they actually have to protect them is Izuku's full counter and black flames. As the battle began, Izuku instructed Mei to actually help them go flying in the air as fast as they can, as Todoroki was about to shoot a flame at Izuku, with Izuku being boosted into the air by Mei's rocket fuel boots, sending them flying in the air, dodging Todoroki's ice flame attack, as the little bit of the heat wave managed to get onto Mei's boots, melting the little bits of bottoms of their soles, but still making them usable, as Mei and Izuku and everyone else was still flying in the air, with Izuku actually managed to keep them stable with black flames shooting from his palms, keeping them in the air as long as possible, as Bakugo was flying into the air trying to bomb Izuku's team out of the competition as fast as possible, with Bakugo throwing an explosion at Izuku, with Izuku doing full counter, extending the explosion back at Bakugo with 5 times the force. Bakugo was instantly thrown back down to his teammates, with Kurashima and Sero both catching him on an entry. All through that round, most people tried to get near Izuku, but Izuku blasted them away with his flames. As Bakugo and Todoroki tried to get near, Izuku would have just full countered it, but the last minute of the actual round, Izuku's headband was stolen by Kurishima's team, also known as Bakugo's team. Izuku turned around and used his black flames on Kurishima's hardened skin, charring it to the skin, as Kurishima winced in pain, dropping the headband, as Shiryu's actually managed to grab the headband with her tongue, wrapping it around, grabbing it back to Midoriya's head, with Midoriya getting 1st place in the Cavalry Battle as well. As for the PvP fights, everything would go like the original. Izuku would have knocked out Shinso, fought out Todoroki, and would have just won. Because Izuku can full counter all his attacks, it's pretty fucking obvious he would win. As for the Bakugo fight, this will be changes. Bakugo tried to focus Izuku more or less, but he failed every single time because of Izuku's hidden reflexes. As Bakugo aimed at the audience trying to throw off Izuku, Izuku stand right in front of the explosion, pulling out his shoe, ready to full counter. As Bakugo aimed to a different direction, as Izuku would have stood right in front of Bakugo, punching him in the stomach, knocking the wind out of him before he could fire. As Bakugo would have been pushed back a little bit, but it wouldn't have stopped him from charging at Izuku more and more and more, until Bakugo's arm started to crack and crumble under the pressure of his explosion quirk going off. The explosive blonde wouldn't let up. Izuku tried to make more room, but Bakugo kept on shattering his arms to make sure Izuku didn't have any room to move. Izuku was at the edge of the arena, as Izuku remembered what All For One's fate looked like. Izuku was furious at this, but he tried to keep calm. Izuku's arm was enveloped in a black flamey substance, as he fired it at Bakugo self-consciously, as Bakugo was sent flying back into the arena, sending him down to the ground unconscious, with Izuku winning that fight. Izuku and Bakugo were both rushed to the infirmary for any sorts of injuries they would have had during the fight. Recovery Girl healed them all up and sent them all out for their winning ceremony. Bakugo was chained up like the original, but he wouldn't be on the number 1 podium. He would be on second, which infuriated him even more than the original. Bakugo would have been trying to get out and use his quirk, but realizing his quirk was being nullified by the handcuffs he was wearing. It didn't help that he was being chained up and mauled like a dog. All the medals will be handed out like the original, but the only difference here would be Todoroki 3rd, Bakugo 2nd, Midoriya in 1st, with All Might being more prouder than the original because Izuku actually won. Izuku attained his medal as he walked outside to actually meet Nijire. As Izuku was just about to take one more step outside, Nijire jumped on him with her breast poking into his back. Izuku let out a loud blush, as Nijire would have unnoticed it. She would have just kissed him on the cheek, saying that's your thank you gift, she said in a very cheerful tone. She would have just let go and hugged him from the front now instead, with her kissing him on the lips, but doing it passionately. A couple of days went by, as Izuku and Nijire both had their date outside. If you guys would actually like me to do the date thing, kind of get this video to 400 likes and I'll do the date. As Izuku and Nijire was both enjoying their day out, and then as they had to go back to school because Izuku was having his 3rd day as rest. Izuku arrived back at school to see Aizawa fully healed and up and running again. As Aizawa did everything like the original, he would have pulled all the boards out showing everyone's scores. Izuku in 2nd place, however, with Todoroki being in 1st because he's the 2nd ranked hero, or his father is the 2nd ranked hero of Japan. Todoroki getting 5,300 points, Izuku getting 4,000, Bakugo 2,000, with everyone else getting their same scores like the original canon. As Izuku's choice of apprenticeship would have been different in this timeline because Izuku would have been taught by a lot of mentors in his years. The only person he hasn't actually been taught by would probably be Endeavor. So I'm going to leave the... Hi everybody, it's Onyx here, and today I am bringing you part 7 of What If Deku Had Full Counter. I do apologize if I don't upload as often as what I should. You know, college is restarting and everything's a lot busier than what I thought it would be. So sorry if the upload schedule is back to the way it was a couple of weeks ago. I do apologize for that, but if you guys would actually like to see more of me or any sort of way like that, all the socials are linked down in the description down below. Twitch, 2nd channel, 3rd channel, and a bunch of other stuff as well. If you guys would actually like to join any of those, I also have a Discord server that is linked down below. You guys can get assortment of roles and have a chat with other people like me or people like in the What If community. Without further ado, let's begin. Sorry for it taking so long for the next part. I do apologize for that. I'll try and upload the next part sometime this week. As for who won for the internship program that UA does with their students, Mirako actually won. Mirako won. Miss Thicky won. Oh god. Alright, let's begin our what if now. And also guys, remember, spam the comment section down below. 1,000 comments, you guys get a 1 hour video. Let's begin. As Izuku was sat there in class, getting ready to actually sign a bunch of forms to get ready to actually go for the internships. As Izuku asked around his classmates to see which one the classmates actually picked. As Uraka came up to Deku saying, "Deku, which internship you going to?" Uraka said. "Well, I'm planning to either go to Miruko's or Ryukyu's agency. Both of them live near where I live, so it'll make it easier for higher travel," Izuku said. Izuku was thinking internally. Maybe I should go with Ryukyu because she's with Nijire, so no, I can't rely on Ryukyu. It has to be Miruko, Izuku said, as Izuku wrote down Miruko on his sheet and handed it into the principal's office, or to Aizawa. As that day went to a close, as Nijire walked up to Izuku, tackling him into a neck hood with her pillows carving to his neck. "Hey Izuku, which one did you pick for your internship?" she said, very cheerfully. Izuku said, laughing. I picked Miruko." "Why you picked that?" she said, pouting, in a very sad tone. "Well, I want to be... what's the word? I want to try and train with different people. Don't take this into offense or anything, Nijire. I love you lots, but I want to try and extend my fighting style to different things. I just can't rely on one thing or other, okay?" Izuku said with a giant smile on his face. "Fine then, but next internship you're coming to Ryukyu's," she said, pouting at him, as Nijire just gave him a kiss on his cheek as they both walked off that day. We're going to do a little time skip here because they would have gone on a date either way here, so we're just going to skip through the arcs just so I can get this into a 1 hour movie special. As the next day arrived, as Izuku picked up all his stuff from UA, as Izuku was given Ryukyu's address. As Izuku walked over to Ryukyu's agency onto the train station. The moment Izuku hopped onto the train, however, he was instantly noticed by the people around him in the crowd. "Hey, you're that kid who won the sports festival," one of the men pointed out. "Yeah, he is. Hey kid, can I have a photo with you?" one of the men said. "Yeah, sure," Izuku said with a smiling face, but still worried to make sure, clinging on to deal life for his stuff to make sure he didn't get stolen. As Izuku arrived at his spot where he had to get off of the bus, Izuku said, excuse me, let me please get off." Everyone just kept on piling onto him before Izuku had enough and started to use little bits of flames to try and make people back off, which some people did, but some people stayed trying to get autographs, the ones that didn't, with them getting burnt just a teensy bit, with saying, "Ow, what the fuck, dude?" As Izuku just used this little effort enough to try and get through, which he succeeded, as Izuku slipped through those people, managing to get out of the train station. As Izuku managed to actually charge through most of the crowds to try and get out of there. As Izuku managed to arrive at Miruko's front door at her agency. As Izuku slipped through the door, being unnoticed by the cameras. As Izuku came in, he just sat down and caught his breath. "Holy crap, they are relentless. Holy crap," Izuku said, panting his head off. As Izuku just waited and waited for Miruko to actually arrive. 5 minutes later, Miruko arrived at the front door of her agency, with her working up a sweat from running 5 miles from a bank to her actual agency, realizing she was late for her intern. As Miruko walked through the door saying, "Hey up kid, sorry I'm late," Miruko said, laughing. "So, what are we doing today?" Izuku said in a very question tone. "So, we're going to do basic training and we're going to put you on patrols for the rest of the day. How's that?" Sounds better, I guess," Izuku said. As Izuku and Miruko both started to train, as Miruko started to hit Izuku around his body, trying to increase his durability quite often. As Miruko hit Izuku, Izuku felt every single blasting blow of Miruko's kicks hitting his body. It felt like his ribs were breaking and healing once again, like it was rapid pacing. Every hit felt like it was a 20-ton hit to his ribs. Izuku felt his body weaken and then toughen up again, like his body was automatically healing itself. Izuku's body started to slowly adjust to Mirako, as Izuku grabbed one of Mirako's kicks and flinged her off of him, sending her back 2 feet. "There we go, kid, you're learning. Let's go again," Mirako said, increasing her strength to 20%. Kicking Izuku again and again and again, this is what happens for 5 hours straight, as Izuku went from 10% All Might power all the way to 15% All Might power in the span of 1 day, just from training with Mirako kicking him and Izuku practicing his punches on Mirako's thick juicy life. I'm joking, as Izuku actually managed to get some stamina drain, and Izuku just sat and slept there the entire day, not feeling going home, as those next couple of days went past like a breeze, as the day came when Izuku actually had to go out patrolling with Mirako, as Izuku just started to feel a little bit sore from Mirako's hard intense training, hitting him with her tight legs. That sounds so bad, sorry. As Izuku and Mirako was both patrolling the streets until Izuku was bumped into by a little girl with a whitish grayish hair, as the girl looked up shaking like she was afraid, as Izuku just picked her up and said, "Excuse me, little girl, are you okay?" Izuku said in a very calm tone. No, I'm not. The big man's trying to chase me," Eri said, trying to hide her fear. "Don't worry there, little girl. We'll save you, don't worry," as Mirako looked back at the man, stating that, "So you're the underground person known as Chisaki or Overhaul? Thought you would be scarier than that," Mirako said, staring at Overhaul in straight, continuous concentration. So you're the rabbit hero. Don't mind destroying your cancer," as Overhaul just decided to actually have a decently good conversation just until they can try and manipulate Izuku and Mirako to actually give back Eri, as this wouldn't succeeded, as Overhaul would have tried to charge at Izuku, but Izuku would have actually pulled out his blade, Overhaul being touched by it, as Overhaul's arms just decided to get little cuts upon burns on his arms and hands, as Overhaul winced in pain, but he still went for it, as Mirako intervened in both of them, kicking Overhaul straight in the face and knocking him out fully with a fractured skull, as Mirako called in the police, stating that what happened there was Overhaul and Chisaki's fault, as all the police came rushing and arrested Overhaul, ending the arc of Overhaul and Eri's intervention. As for what would happen after that, I would say Izuku would take Eri and take care of her for the rest of the day, along with Mirako helping her out as well. Eri would be a lot scared than in canon, because she literally just saw Mirako kick Chisaki's head unconscious, coming in at the same time. With her being abused and tons of violence on her, she's really scared and shivering around Mirako, but Izuku tries to comfort her best as he can. As for the Stain arc, Izuku will be there like canon, with Izuku rushing in to the fray with Mirako, trying to save as many people as he can. As Izuku realized Ida picked an agency around this area, Izuku instantly rushed out of Mirako's basically supervision. As Izuku rushed down the streets and popped up to the buildings trying to find where Ida was, Izuku rushed everywhere he could and find where he wanted to go, but Izuku couldn't find Ida at all until he heard someone screaming, "Ah!" A person shouted with blue hair. "Don't worry, I'm coming," as Izuku rushed and rushed. The moment Izuku arrived, he saw Ida's arm getting impaled by a sword. One more stab should do this, as Stain threw down his last knife at Ida's head, just grazing it before Izuku threw a giant flame of fire at Stain's head, knocking him fully back just a couple of feet, just enough for Ida to move his head away from the knife falling on his head. "Holy shit! That was close," Izuku said, panting like mad. "Midoriya, this is my fight, back off," Ida said, like canon. It seems like you were having some trouble, so why not help you, Izuku said, as Izuku rushed in to save Ida, grabbing him and throwing him onto the top of the building out of the way. So, you're Stain. It's good to meet you then, Izuku said, cracking his neck, as Izuku reached out for the back of his back, grabbing his knife of his own, which in you guys' terms is lost or vain, as Izuku unsheathed his powerful knife, surrounding hidden dark flames around his arm just for extra defense. As Izuku threw his knife back and forth at Stain's head, trying to knock him off balance just a tiny bit, Izuku's flames started to get more and more brighter as Stain started to stab Izuku right into his kidney, sending Izuku into a wall as Izuku started to bleed out heavily. You seem like you could be useful for certain things, Stain said. You could be a good hero, so I'm just gonna let you go off like you would do in canon, as just like the original Todoroki would have just fired his flames at Stain, knocking him back quite a hefty bit of feet. Midori, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Go see how Ida's doing. Midori, are you okay? Todoroki said as Izuku started to lose his conscience a little bit from the blood loss, but Izuku stood firm and started to grip his weak spot as Izuku started to regain little bits of his consciousness back, as Izuku started to swing his sword at Stain to try and get his attention while Todoroki got them out of there. As Ida and everything else went like cannon without Izuku using one for all, of course, Izuku would have used his flames. Izuku would have actually charged at Stain, doing the same damage and same combos like in canon, and the Stain arc would end the same. The hospital would have gone, and all the credit would have gone to Endeavor like canon. And every single arc after that would become the forest training arc, and before that would be the final exams, which we'll be doing at this very moment. Every single score would have been like canon, with Izuku getting the same score, Moya and Rozu getting first place on their written tests. As for the physical portion of the exam, every single team will be the same like canon, with Izuku's team who will be teamed with Bakugo. Every single argument after when they started would have still been the same like canon, but if Bakugo wouldn't have brung up his family or anything of the sorts until they started to get closer to All Might. You know what, you stupid Deku? If it wasn't because of you, your father would probably still be here to this very day saving lives, instead of him being dead because of you, Bakugo said, out of context of course. This made Izuku beyond mad, remembering back to those days when All For One killed his father, as Izuku's fire started to redevelop his body and started to maze a blazing blur, as Izuku disappeared from sight, punching Bakugo square in the stomach, creating fire around Bakugo, setting him ablaze. As people in the actual area where they were watching this exam, as Nezu shouted down to Izuku, telling him to snap out of it, as Aizawa just intervened in this, cancelling out Izuku's quirk, making his flames disappear off Izuku and Bakugo's body, as Bakugo's body was charred and burned, as Bakugo was rushed to the actual office of recovery girls. Bakugo was really burned with third-degree burns on his arms and legs, making him unable to participate in the entrance exam. As Izuku was being scolded by one of the teachers of UA, as Izawa just hopped onto Izuku's shoulder, holding his shoulder. I can't explain how it was meant to be, but explaining to Izuku to come to the principal's office, as Izuku complied. As Izuku was helped to the principal's office, as Nezu asked him what set him off, making him want to burn Bakugo alive. Izuku explained to Nezu, stating that what Bakugo said in the entrance exam, and what he said there, as Nezu was beyond pissed at what Bakugo's statement was, as Bakugo was staying in Recovery Girl's office for another day, as the entrance exam, or the final exam, was postponed for Izuku's team, but for the other teams, they had to do their exam. As another day went past, Izuku was actually walking to school that day, as Nejire hopped onto his shoulders, saying, "Izuku," she said with a cheerful tone. "How was your exams? Mine was brilliant," she said. I actually didn't do mine yet," Izuku said with an awkward smile. Why, what's up? Is it because of that duly beaten Bakugo? She said, as Izuku just smiled, saying, yeah, I lost control of my quirk and actually almost burned him alive. Oh god, Izuku said with a chuckling smile, as Nijire just hugged him again and gave him a kiss on his lips. Okay then, Izuku, bye-bye, she said, running off to her class. Very innocently, I would say. As Izuku walked into his class that day, as everyone else had all their stuff packed and ready. Where's everyone going? Izuku said. As Izuku remembered, oh, shit on it, Izuku said. I forgot my stuff. Don't worry about that, Izuku. You'll be staying here for the dorm system. Dorm system? Izuku said questioningly. Yeah, because you and Bakugo didn't do your exam because Bakugo decided to say something he shouldn't have and you used control of your quirk. Your test has been postponed until he heals correctly, so you won't be going on the trip. Okay then, Mr. Aizawa, Izuku said. So what will I be doing? You'll be doing extra classes here with Midnight and All Might. As everything in the forest training art would have gone like canon, but Fumikage would have actually been kidnapped as well. So that's just the training arc area. With Koda, I would say someone else would try and save him, but it's on the list of basically yes and no. So I would say no, he wouldn't have been killed, or yes, he would be killed. It's your guys' decision here if you guys want him dead or alive. Okay, the All-for-One fight now begins. Because of Bakugo's absence being at that area, only Fumikage has actually been taken by the League of Villains, so technically it's Fumikage instead of Bakugo in this timeline. As Uraraka and everyone else would have came back from the camp with Izuku outside of the dorm rooms. Yo guys, what's what's wrong with the long faces? Izuku said in confusion. Fumikage was kidnapped, Uraraka said in depression tone. Wait, what? He was kidnapped? Where? And when? In the forest training arc we were attacked by the League of Villains. Izuku started to growl his fist up into a ball, remembering all the darkness that surrounded him that day with All-for-One. So what are we doing sitting around here? Let's go save him. As everything else would have gone like canon, I really can't be asked to actually cover the rest of this. So I'm just going to skip ahead tiny bits of the arcs. As Izuku and everyone else started to appear at the League of Villains hideout, as they saw something that they couldn't unsee anymore. They saw Shigaraki floating up in the air as All-for-One in this timeline. So, All Might, you're really weak, aren't you? Shigaraki said in a very weirded out tone. Let's just see what you look like, ripped apart. As Shigaraki started to decay the area around him, Izuku started to get beyond and beyond pissed seeing the same man, or seeing in his mental state the same man that killed his father that day. As Izuku's body started to rip around in anger, as his body started to glow and glow and glow, until the point Izuku's body started to buff up and get a lot bigger than what it should do. Izuku's body started to grow golden wings and golden little pinkish fur surrounding his body in whitish armor. As the moment that transformation was finished, Izuku looked around his mid-30s, buffed up as all hell, as Izuku's pressure came off of him like it was the normal. Izuku managed to crush Shigaraki into the ground. What the hell is that? Shigaraki said in a scowled tone, as Izuku just walked up to him like cool-ass Escanor. Weak, Izuku said, as Izuku just punched Shigaraki into the ground, crumbling his face, leaving nothing behind except from just a cloud of smoke. The moment the smoke cleared, however, Shigaraki was no more. He looked like a dead carcass burned and charred into the ground, like Gorgon used at the end of his adult transformation, how he looked so burnt and bruised and no blood around him. The moment Izuku killed Shigaraki, however, Izuku's mind started to slip into darkness. As Izuku passed out, Tree transforming back into his childlike form, or to his teen state. as Izuku was instantly rushed to the hospital, being greeted when he wakes up, of course. But he was greeted in a dark, voided room, seeing nothing that was there behind